also usually this time we go across the ditch and have a look at Australia, where so many New Zealanders are, and so many New Zealanders were seen still intent upon heading, including certain police personnel. Uh, we tend to get the worst of them, although I see a rapist in a story that was is being portrayed or relayed by Radio New Zealand, a rapist who would normally Kiwi rapist, Maori man by the name of Hoani Kahu, who raped a drunk 15-year-old in Australia, has avoided deportation. Now, he was going to become another 501. Great, just what we need, more people like him. But he was sentenced 8 years imprisonment, all relating to the convictions of rape. There were a number of them. But he's going to be allowed under Australia's Migration Act to stay. So that would be useful. We've got enough 501s back here already. I'm sure Australia would have a view on that, though. Anyhow, joining us to talk about that and all the events of the past week, Jaqui Lane joins us now. Jack, great to have you. It's very rainy over there. It's very wet, I'm told.
Well, yeah, it's very wet on the east coast and very dry on the west coast. So that's typical Australia for you.
But you've evacuated something like 50,000 people. That's extraordinary.
Yeah, and from quite a relatively small area. So north of Sydney, up to a place called Coffs Harbour. They call it
Yeah.
the mid-north coast. And between the sea and the ranges. So it's not actually geographically a huge area, but yeah, it's just it's where anybody who can't afford to live in Sydney goes up to the mid-north coast for quality of life and other things. And there's 5 rivers in that area, and they're all flooding. And I think one Taree's had 500 mils of rain in 3 days.
Yeah, that's a lot. Yeah, we couldn't handle that
Yeah,
either.
yeah.
These floods in northern New South Wales, as you say, half a metre of rain in 3 days, that's just extraordinary. Um, is, I mean, are you getting more of these sorts of weather events? Every time I seem to talk to you, particularly on the east coast, a good part of it's flooding.
Yeah, so this area had some major floods back in 2021, and people are kind of just getting back on their feet since then. And then sort of northern New South Wales and Queensland's had several major floods events over the last 5 to 10 years. So I think I don't know the stats, but I'd be confident to say that the severity of the flooding is getting worse. There used
Mm.
to be 1 in 100 year floods every 50 years. I mean, I think they're saying that the flooding up there north now is the worst since 1920. So just the quantity and the regularity, I think, are increasing. And meanwhile, Western New South Wales, parts of Victoria, Adelaide, South Australia and West Australia are facing some of the worst drought conditions they've seen in decades.
Mm. No, oh, wow. Um, I guess now you're in New South Wales, so northern New South Wales. How do they handle disaster relief over that? Is it state by state, is it?
It is state by state, but in cases like this, so they've deployed the ADF, the Australian Defence Force, and we've now got SES and other services from other states now coming in to help out. So first port of call is state based, and typically also with when we have big bushfires, other states kind of deploy their people, and often the ADF gets called in as well. So I think there's now 3,500 police, SES, ADF people with boats, trains, planes, helicopters, whatever, up in the region right now.
Okay. Oh well, and no indication of when it's going to close. I see even now as I'm looking, it's still raining heavily in this particular area as I talk even now. Is that right?
It's just starting to clear up, so it's moving. The weather is moving south, and Sydney's been pretty horrible for a couple of days, and it's moving down to then the Southern Highlands, sort of south-southwest. So they're expecting it to start clearing now-ish over the weekend, but that doesn't mean that the rivers necessarily will start coming down immediately, because they've got huge catchment areas, of course. So whilst the rain might ease and stop, the flooding risk is still alive and well.
You know, when I first came to see you, I think I had Winston Peters with me, or I was trailing him really, and we met up with you in Sydney. Uh, it was and you showed us around Sydney. I can remember there were talk and a lot of talk around having to have desalination plants set up
Mm,
along the east coast
mm,
to deal
yep.
with the expected water shortage that was going to come. You've got no shortage of water these days. I imagine all those desalination plants, all those plans got incinerated a long time ago.
Well, not before a couple were built, and there's one in South Sydney that's been built and has never been deployed, I think. So we've paid for it, and we pay for it to be ready, but I'm not sure it's ever been activated.
Well, you surely won't be needing it this year. Yeah, that's for real.
No,
And the other thing, of course,
no.
was that the rivers were going to be drying up as well, and so there was all these concern about, you know, the desalination or the salination and sorry, the drying out of the interior. I assume that's not happening on the eastern coast now either.
No, not the eastern side of the dividing range, but on the western side, there's drought and there's serious water shortages. So Australia kind of doesn't have a water problem. What it's got is a water transportation problem.
Yeah.
So, you have these huge monsoonal rains up north, but they kind of stay there and don't go anywhere, because building pipelines or doing any of that kind of infrastructure is just too expensive, because the country's so large.
Mm.
And it's a very similar thing to our gas. All the gas reserves kind of up north, it's way too expensive to pipe them down to the east coast, although there are some. But it's the size of this country is just makes a lot of that kind of what you would regard as typical infrastructure just cost prohibitive.
Listen, the other thing that struck me this week, I think it happened about this time last week, in actual fact, maybe just a bit after, was in the wake of the Australian elections, the breakup of the Liberal and National coalition. Now, the Liberals always were the dominant partner in that coalition. I imagine they still were at the time of the breakup. The National Party's always been seen as the sort of rural rump, I guess, but I think it held on to all its seats at the last election. Maybe it lost one. The Liberals got hammered. Why are the Liberal and the National Coalition breaking up? And how long have they been together? Is this a divorce or is this just a trial separation?
Well, as of this morning, they might be getting back together again.
Oh, God. No fool like an old fool.
Yep, yep. So I think that yeah. So that they're kind of back in discussions again. So it might be the 48-hour breakup. So which kind of I think they've been together for forever, 80 years or something. So it's yeah, I think it's a bit of leadership posturing. I think that to a degree there are differences between what the regional rural constituency wants and what your typical Liberal Party person wants. So I'm surprised it really hasn't happened earlier. I'm not sure that they will now break up because they've got no hope in hell of winning the next election if they run as independent parties. It's just never going to happen.
Really?
So
Why would that be, given that you tend to be a Liberal in one area? So in let's just say your urban areas, you've got your Liberal candidate. And if you were thinking of voting country, you go and vote for your Liberal candidate, and vice versa in the regions. Why wouldn't they?
yeah, but
Couldn't they stand in?
if they don't join together, they won't individually they won't have enough seats to counter Labor. So they
No,
kind
but
of
I
have to
assume
stay.
that they would. Oh, I see what you mean. No, I mean the Liberals of their own would clearly not win the election. You're right,
Yeah,
because they. But I'm just saying that they could only coalesce, or there'd be a coalition government anyhow, wouldn't there? It would have to be.
yeah, probably. Yes, yes, and so and whilst that's eminently possible, it would be interesting. It would make it, yeah, it would be easier for the Labor Party to, I guess, present a united front, and so I think that they kind of have to get back together if they really want to.
What stops them doing a
Um,
National Party stuff here? I mean, at the moment, the National Party is representative of both, as you know, the metropolitans, well, if you can call Auckland metropolitan, I suppose you can, Wellington, the provincial, rural areas, and then your sort of provincial seats, and they're all sitting in the same caucus. Why has there never been one centre-right party in the UK? Sorry, in Australia.
Look, I just think that's a matter of kind of historical things. I mean, the reality is the coalition, typically as the coalition, they would have had a combination of Liberal and National Party people as deputy prime minister and having shadow ministry. So they would split those. So that was one of the things that I think that from the National Party's point of view, that if they had split, they would get no representation in a shadow cabinet. So typically, Liberal National has worked together as a true coalition and had joint representation, and it's typically worked pretty well. Um, so it was kind of, it's a shock, yeah, that they were thinking of splitting, because that typically it's actually worked pretty well, for that
Is
reason that you've got your, yeah.
Well, in the wake of that election earlier this month, and the Liberal losing its leadership, in fact, not holding on to a seat, etc., the Liberals, I think last week elected, might have been the week before, but last week, Sussan Ley. I think that's is that a proper name,
No, it's
pronunciation?
Susan. It's
Well, then
just call
why
her
has she got
Susan.
two S's in her name?
Oh, because she just changed it. I mean, I changed the spelling of my name several times. I don't think it's a big
No,
deal.
but yeah, but I now there's a reason for that that's given on a Wikipedia page, and it says because it was all to do with numerology, and that you were luckier if you
Oh,
added but it's just bizarre. Is she as nutty as that
yeah.
sounds?
No, she's not as nutty as that sounds. She's quite an articulate, intelligent person. So
Oh.
I don't know. Just it's a distraction, I think.